For decades, Intel was the undisputed king of computing. Their processors powered nearly every computer on Earth. But in the early 2000s, a seismic shift was happening, and Intel didn't see it coming. The personal computer was Intel's playground. They had 95% market share. Competitors like AMD tried to challenge them, but Intel's engineering prowess and manufacturing scale seemed unstoppable. Then came 2007. A company called Apple released the iPhone. It wasn't just a phone, it was a revolution, but Intel barely noticed. They were too focused on their traditional x86 architecture. The iPhone used an ARM-based processor called the A4. It was small, efficient, and powerful enough for a handheld device. But it represented something Intel had never seriously considered: computing without x86. Intel's leadership made a critical decision. They'd focus on power-hungry desktop and server chips. Mobile devices were too small, too niche. Why would they compete in a market worth millions when PCs were worth billions? Meanwhile, Apple made a bold bet. Instead of licensing off-the-shelf ARM chips, they'd design their own. The A5, A6, and A7 processors pushed boundaries year after year. Each one was faster and more efficient than the last. What made Apple different was vertical integration. They controlled the hardware, software, and processor design. Intel couldn't compete with that kind of synergy. They were still selling chips to computer makers. Intel tried to respond. They launched the Atom processor for mobile devices in 2008. It was meant to compete with ARM, but it consumed too much power and generated too much heat. Phone makers rejected it. Then Intel made another strategic error. They focused on netbooks, cheap, light laptops. But as smartphones got more powerful, people asked, why carry two devices? One powerful phone was enough. While Intel stumbled, Apple's A-series chips kept improving. The A8, A9, and A10 Fusion crushed the competition. By 2016, an iPhone processor was faster than Intel's entry-level Core CPUs. The market shifted seismically. By 2018, smartphone sales exceeded PC sales globally. Intel had optimized for a shrinking market while ignoring the explosive growth of mobile. Intel's culture was also a problem. The company had been built on the principle of cramming more transistors onto chips, their famous Moore's Law. But mobile demanded a completely different approach. Mobile computing required efficiency above all. Power consumption mattered more than raw speed. Intel's chips were like bringing a bulldozer to a knife fight. Apple designed for elegance and battery life. Then there was the foundry problem. Intel built their own chips in massive, expensive factories. Apple outsourced to Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, Tsmc. Tsmc was faster, more flexible, and cheaper. Tsmc could iterate faster and scale production quickly. When Apple needed 50 million chips in 6 months, Tsmc delivered. Intel's inflexible manufacturing meant they couldn't adapt fast enough. By 2020, the gap was undeniable. Apple's M1 chip, the first for their Macs, blew away Intel's latest processors. It was faster, more efficient, and used less power. The king had been dethroned. Intel's response came too late. They announced Foveros and other ambitious projects, but they were playing catch-up in a game they'd never bothered to enter. The numbers tell a devastating story. In 2000, Intel's market cap was nearly equal to Apple's. Today, Apple is worth 3 times more. Intel's dominance has evaporated. What made this failure even more striking is that Intel saw it coming. Memos from 2004 warned of mobile's potential, but the company's culture couldn't execute the pivot. The problem was organizational inertia. Intel was too successful. When you dominate a market, change feels like suicide. Why fix what isn't broken? Until suddenly, the entire game has changed. Apple, conversely, had nothing to lose. They were building a new category with the iPhone. Designing their own chips wasn't a pivot. It was the foundation of their strategy. The iPhone's success attracted the world's best chip designers to Apple. Why work on incremental improvements at Intel when you could revolutionize computing at Apple? Intel's 10-nanometer process faced repeated delays. Apple's partners at TSMC achieved 5-nanometer processes. The manufacturing advantage swung decisively. Today, every smartphone processor is ARM-based. Intel's mobile gamble failed completely. They own less than 5% of the mobile market they once ignored. Intel tried one more thing, Larrabee, a radical GPU project. But it failed. Then they spent billions on failed mobile initiatives. The cash drain weakened their ability to compete in any market. Meanwhile, Apple continued executing flawlessly. The M1, M2, and M3 chips proved that vertical integration and custom design were unbeatable. Apple now makes the fastest laptop chips in the world. The lesson is painful but clear. Market dominance is temporary. The competition isn't always from your current rivals. It's from companies willing to reimagine the entire paradigm. Intel is still a powerful company, but they're no longer the king. Apple's vertical integration, relentless innovation, and willingness to abandon x86 created an unassailable advantage. The mobile revolution wasn't just about smaller devices. It was about a complete rethinking of computing, power consumption, efficiency, and seamless integration. Intel missed it entirely. And that's the story of how Intel lost the mobile revolution. Not through bad luck or impossible competition, but through the arrogance of dominance and the failure to imagine a different future.